Hey, it's Scott again from Good Book Explorer, coming to you today from Palo Duro or Palo Duro State Park in Texas. It's very close to Amarillo, so we're in the northern part of Texas. And we're continuing on with the book of James. We're in chapter 2, and James has just finished up kind of almost a parable about how you would treat two different sections of people, the rich versus the poor. And he starts in this next little section in the second chapter, about 4 verses where he speaks almost like an answer to someone who would say, yeah, we heard what you were saying, but we have kept the law and we've done all these things. So James kind of nips that in the bud and tells them that they need to adhere to the royal law. And this is kind of a weird turn of phrase here, the royal law, because we know what James is speaking about was written years before in Leviticus, in the law, where it says that you need to treat your neighbor as yourself. Modern people have took that kind of like, well, you can't love someone till you love yourself, but that's not what he's saying here, because most of us do not have a problem loving ourselves. If you don't believe me, get 5 guys around the last piece of pizza, and you'll notice that they love themselves more than they do their others, or that's been my experience. But anyway, he speaks of the royal law. Now, again, we know this was a law back in Leviticus, but we also know that Jesus talked about this very thing. He said, if you can love your Lord, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, and you can love others, you have pretty well fulfilled the law, because that's what it was in place for. So the royal law is that law that's been around forever, and that law that Jesus the King has come back in and has restated in a mighty way. And Jesus tells the story when he was asked about who is your neighbor, and he tells the story about the Good Samaritan, basically about your neighbor is everyone that's around you. So we have that, and he says you need to follow this royal law. And if you do not, it's a sin. So if you treat others in a worse way than you would treat yourself, then obviously that's a sin. And then he goes on a little further and says that that if you break one law, then you've broken them all. That's kind of a weird concept too, because we don't think about that with our societal laws. If I break a law, if I'm speeding, I get charged with speeding and speeding only, and not the whole law comes down on top of me for that. It's just this one issue. But James says, and others do as well, that if you break one, you might as well have broken them all. I had a guy to tell this in an illustration that really helped me. He said that his sons were shooting at cans, and they inadvertently missed the can and shot into a store window, a big old plate glass window across the road, which is scary in itself. But of course the store owner did not like that. So the man with the 2 sons walked over and said, hey, oh my goodness, my boys have messed up. They have done wrong. But he looks, and there's just a little tiny hole down in the bottom of the glass where the BB, I think it was, had went through. And so the guy said, oh, that little hole, said he would take $20 and probably work for that, and let's call that even. And the store owner says, whoa, no, you don't understand. I don't get to repair that one little place. I have to repair the whole big plate glass. So that's kind of what James and the others are talking about. If you put a little hole in the corner, and it may seem insignificant to you, but the whole glass has to be repaired. And that's the way it is when we sin. We have to be, our whole self has to be repaired. So James goes and lets them know that you must follow the royal law, and that if you break one, it's like you've broken them all. So James is continuing to speak about how we treat others and how very important it is. In this day and time, that's difficult sometimes. And I think about how many times I've just walked by, the homeless or the marginalized people that Jesus was really all about. And so I guess what James is trying to tell us is we need to be extremely careful how we treat those that cannot benefit us at all, how we treat our neighbor because we want to treat them as we want to be treated, or how basically if you love yourself, love your neighbor in the same way. So James does not mince words. Pretty tough. Words to live by. Hey, we're enjoying exploring God's world out here and His Word. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Thanks.